All right, today in lesson 16, we are going to work with number line still, but in this case, we are going to use whole number fractions that are greater than 1. So you know that, for example, if we're talking about thirds, 3/3 equals 1, we're going to find out that you can place numbers like 2 on a number line as well using fractions. So in this case, 6/3 is equal to 2. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that's how we incorporate division into our fractions as well. All right, let's take a look at the problem set and get started. So here in this example, the first one, you see that 0/2 is 0. You see that 2/2 is 1, or 2 out of 2 is 1. And 4 out of 2, or 4 halves, is 2. The reason 4 halves is 2, if you think about this, that's 1 half, that's 2 halves, that's 3 halves, and that's 4 halves. I have 2 wholes now. If I filled in 4 halves, I've had 2 wholes. So if we're working with halves, you'd label this number line with the whole numbers, fractions, like 0 halves is 0, 2 halves is 1, and 4 halves is 2. And then you'd also place the other fractions on there as well, the fractions that represent parts that are not complete wholes. So let's go ahead and try that with the next one with thirds here. So we have, notice our numbers that we're going between are 1 and 2. So we're not starting with 0 in this case. And that's very important to pay attention to that detail so that you ensure that you're working with the right numbers. So 1 we know is 3/3. And for 2, we know we're still working with thirds. We've talked a lot about how the denominator is not going to change. But we need to think about how many thirds make up 2 wholes. Well, we know 3/3 is 1 whole, and we know another 3/3 will be 2 wholes. So 3/3 plus another 3/3 is 6/3. I could also draw that if it's helpful for you. So 1, 2, and 3 in the first one, and 1, 2, and 3 in the second one adds up to 2 wholes. And so we only have this whole number line here is only representing 1 whole from 1 to 2. That's only 1 whole number. And so we can divide the whole thing into thirds, and we'll say they're all going to be thirds. So 3/3, add another third to that. This gap right here, the space represents another third. So 3/3 to 4/3, and this space represents another one. That's 5/3. And then from there to there is 6/3. So you can either, depending on what strategy works better for you, start with, figure out this one and then move forward and label this one last. Or like I did, you can label the 2 endpoints first and then go from there when you have one like this. The next one is dealing with halves again. And notice we go from 2 to 4. So that's 2 wholes within here. So let's label 2 halves first. That's 4/2. And this time I'll just do it the other way, where I'll label the next one. So I'll split between 2 and 3, get split in half 1 time. Because right here, that's 1 entire whole. I'll actually I'll label them different colors. Like that's a whole. And this is a different whole. So each whole needs to be split in half in this case. So this is 5 halves. 3 wholes becomes 6 halves. And then again, I have another whole here that's been shaded or colored in between 3 and 4, and I have to split that number in half to get 7 halves. And my last one would be 8 halves. I think the directions say to box the whole numbers. So I've done that for you as well. So identify where the holes are and then split each whole unit into whatever fractional unit they're talking about. So on the next one, we have fourths. And we're going to go from 3 to 5, which means we're missing a whole number here, which is 4. So 3 to 4, I'll do the same thing with the colors again. I'll get some better markers though this time. Between 3 and 4, that's a hole. And between 4 and 5, that's a hole. Right? So I have 2 holes that need to be split into fourths. So what you need to be careful about here is that you're not just splitting this whole line into fourths, because there are 2 holes within this, not 1. So I have to split this color into fourths. And then once I've done that, this one into fourths. So we know that 4 fourths equals 1. And we need to figure out how many fourths 3 holes is. So if 4 fourths is 1, well, 8 fourths would be 2 holes, and 12 fourths would be 3 holes. 12 fourths is 3. I'm going to show, I've showed you this in class, I'll show you it again. The way to figure this top number out when you're dealing with a hole is you take your denominator, so 4 times whatever the whole number is you're dealing with, 3. So this is the denominator. Denom. That is your whole number. And this equals your numerator. So to figure out the numerator, there's a trick to it. You multiply this 3 by that 4 to get to 12. 3 holes, we're working with fourths, and you can get your numerator by multiplying those numbers. So we end up with 12, and then it's as easy as 13 fourths, 14 fourths, 15 fourths, 16 fourths. Now, when I get there, I should check it. I should say, is 4 times 4 16? Yes, it is. That means I'm doing it correctly. 17 fourths, 18 fourths, 19 fourths, and 20 fourths. And again, once I get to a whole number, I double check it and I say, 5 times 4, is that 20? Yes, it is. So we take the whole number, multiply it by the denominator, and then we get our numerator. Let's do that on the bottom one. Now we've upped the level of difficulty here on the last one, because we're going from 6 to 9. So we have to have 6 to 7 on there, and then 7 to 8 on here, and then 8 to 9. So we have 3 holes on our sheet, which means I am short a marker and I need to get one more. So we have purple, pink, and blue on here. And these are our holes that need to be divided into thirds. So each color is going to get divided into thirds. You can see here that the purple section has 3 parts to it now. The pink section has 3 parts to it, and the blue section has 3 parts to it. So we can go ahead and label our fractions. We know we're working with thirds. So I can find the numerator by multiplying my whole number times my denominator. 6 times 3 is 18. So 18 thirds, 19 thirds, 20 thirds, 21 thirds. That's another whole number. I'm right above the 7. So 7 times 3, is that 21? Yes, it is. We've done it correctly. 22 thirds, 23 thirds, 24 thirds. Again, I'm at a whole number, so I stop and check. Is 8 times 3 24? It is, so I can move on. 25 thirds, 26 thirds, and 27 thirds. I should box my whole numbers again. 9 times 3 is 27, so we know we've done that properly as well. All right, so color coding them can be a great way for us to identify where the holes are along the number line. And the other trick there is finding the numerator by multiplying the whole number times the denominator to figure out what the numerator is going to be when you are at a whole number on your number line. The next part says to partition each hole into fifths, label the fractions, count up as you go, box the fractions just like we did a minute ago. So we're going from 0 to 2. So again, I'll color code these for you. Go pink, blue, Those are our two holes there. If you're doing this at home for homework, it might be helpful for you to get a crayon or a colored pencil or marker and do the same thing that I'm doing. And we're marking these into fifths. So 1, 2, oh, that's too close. Try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. I do 4 lines, which separated this pink section into 5 parts. And I'll do the same thing here. 1 section of blue, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I have 5 sections of blue as well. So we start here with 0. 0 times 5. Again, we have a denominator of 5 because we're working with fifths. 0 times 5 is 0. And then we go 1/5 because that's 1 section of fifths. 2/5. Now we've taken up 2 sections. 3/5, 4/5, and 5/5. And we're pretty comfortable with this 1 now because we've worked with that a lot. 1 times 5 is 5. So we have 5/5, which is 1. 6/5, 7/5, 8/5, 9/5, and 10/5. We can box that as well and double check it because we're at a whole number. 2 times our denominator of 5 equals 10 for our numerator. And that's what we had, so it worked out. I'm going to stop there for today. I think that you guys have a good understanding of what it is we need to work on with this. I do think it's helpful to color code the holes, especially as we're just beginning here. That's a tool that we can eventually do away with, but for the beginning, I think that's helpful for us to identify where each hole is and make sure that we're taking each hole and separating it into the right number of parts. And that second thing I really want you to come away from this lesson with is being able to multiply a whole number times the denominator to figure out what your numerator needs to be for that fraction. All right, guys, keep working hard and please ask me questions if you have them.